people in their 20s to go work at a startup or go do something where you know you have skills to offer. Design, engineering, building brands, making content. It does not matter how much money you're making today, because if God forbid something happens and you need a large sum of money, you just stop spending, you go offer your skills, and within 3 weeks you're going to get there.
Hilarious, because we're going to be so late to this event at this point.
What time is it?
It's 4:30.
What time does the event start?
5:30.
Okay, yeah.
It's fine.
We'll be good.
Priorities.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's get started. Oh my goodness. I'm pretty sure last time we met, you had lost your co-founder and your boyfriend.
Yes, I had no men in my life last year. This time they were in and out, but things are looking way better now.
So we need an update. So start from the beginning.
So should I do a recap of where things left off, or?
Yes, from where things left off. And I will say, though, there is a good ending to this, because Lillie now has a co-founder and a boyfriend.
Yep.
So yes, tell us how it's done.
Well, when we were talking last August, the two biggest areas of my life I was trying to fix was, one, I wanted to find a co-founder to build my company with, and two, I'm 26 years old, I was single, I wanted to find a boyfriend. And it's so funny how similar finding a boyfriend and finding a co-founder is in terms of process and people and everything. But when we were talking, I had talked to two people, from one co-founder, one boy that I was seeing, potentially about working together, and it just wasn't working out. I think you can kind of tell when something's not working and you're trying really hard to make it work. And so when October came around, I was in the mindset, and I think this is advice I would give anyone who is trying too hard to make something happen when it's not happening. Just take a step back, take a break. The more you try to force something to happen, the less likely it is to happen. Even if it does happen, it's not going to be the right person. So by October, my mindset was, I'm going to start this company on my own, and I'm just going to be single because I don't need a man in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And literally right as I decided that was what I was going to do, was when I met my co-founder for the very first time. And then a month and a half later, I met my boyfriend.
You know what's actually crazy? This exact thing happened to my boyfriend too.
No way.
He met me and his co-founder in the exact same weekend after looking desperately for both for literally years. It's so crazy how if you just literally just step back for a moment, I don't know what it is. Is it about your energy or what, that just somehow all these things start working for you?
Yeah, I think it is your energy. And I also think that you can see, when you decide that you don't want something so badly anymore, you see things more clear. I think when you want something really bad, the delusion or desperation, I think is the right word, clouds your judgment, and that you just can't make good decisions. But it was, I think, the end of September, beginning of October. I was about to go back home to Toronto because that's where I'm from. I was only in New York for 3 months in the summer, and I was invited to an event that our friend in BC was hosting. So of course, that was the space where a lot of tech entrepreneurs, engineers, product leaders were going to be. And it's really interesting because I almost decided not to go. That night I had a huge migraine, and I don't know how you feel about networking events, but going to networking events is already tiring, and then just on top of that, having a migraine.
Exhausting.
I was I'm not going to meet anyone. There's no point. But because I was going back home the next week and I wasn't going to be in New York anymore, I thought, okay, you should go. You should be in a space before you go back home. And so I went, and it was 50 people at I think a small convention center. It was a dinner, and it was way too hectic. My migraine was kicking in. I was I'm going to the corner. I don't want to talk to anyone. And while I was in the corner, literally being antisocial, at a table, sitting down, not talking to anyone, I'd overheard two people behind me talking about starting a clothing brand. And I thought that was interesting. Not that many people talked about starting a clothing brand. And I turned around, joined the conversation, ended up meeting Connor that way, who was my co-founder. He had his own streetwear brand that he had built and sold, and so that was super interesting. And that's how we met. I briefly told him about Breezi that day, just very high level. I don't think he understood it. I think he thought it was kind of dumb at first, but he ended up following me on Instagram. I had my newsletter pinned to my Instagram. He read my newsletter, which was a lot about my values, my mission, why I want to start this company. And then we met for coffee because of that. And so I think my advice to other people who are in this position of wanting a new opportunity or searching for something better is you don't have to start a newsletter or like start a podcast, but you need to put information about yourself on the internet so people can find you. Like if you don't have anything about your personal website, a podcast, a newsletter, a Twitter, like a blog, it doesn't matter. If people don't see that, they're not going to find you. They're not going to connect with you.
Oh my God, that's so real. I think Sean Puri is the one who says this first, but it's like this concept of a binge bank. You have to create like this like perfect portfolio and representation of yourself online. That often means that you have to make multiple pieces of content, maybe have a newsletter, have your bio, like actually be intentional and thoughtful about what you represent. Doesn't matter that no one's going to look at it. All you need is the one right person to look at it and then make a fundamental decision or action according. That is the opportunity that you're looking for. Like they need to kind of find you. It's like this mix of, okay, well, I'm going to, show up to the networking event and like create the luck for myself, create the opportunity where someone would like get to know me. But at the end of the day, you could be like this person who doesn't work hard, doesn't actually have a personal brand, is not passionate about things, not working towards things. And guess what? Even though that person met you, even though you showed up to the event, they're not going to reach back out to you. Why would they want to work with you? Like you haven't actually individually worked on yourself and grown. So oftentimes what I'll say is like, oh yeah, like there's no point in networking events. What I mean by that is not that it's not important to go to networking events. The point is like, it's not the networking event it's the fact that you're actually showing up. Someone can actually get to know about you, but if you don't actually do the work on yourself, that doesn't matter if they get to know of you, because they're not going to want to work with you, they're not going to talk to you, they're not going to want to help you, because what value are you giving them? You know what I mean? And totally. I feel like you finally in that moment when you're like, okay, you know what, I'm going to like release this obsession with like getting a boyfriend and getting a co-founder, and just like worked on yourself. Yeah. It was when it all came, because you actually now have value to give to everyone else around you.
Totally. So we met, so he slid in my DMs and was like, we should meet for coffee. Like, I think the way you're talking about things is super interesting. We met for coffee at Washington Square Park. This was literally 3 days before I was going back home to Toronto with like no return ticket back to New York. And I think because, and this again goes back into like when you don't want things, you feel more free to say what's on your mind. Like I was not in that coffee conversation with Connor thinking I need to convince him to be my co-founder. I was like, this guy's cool. He thinks I'm cool. We're catching up for coffee. I have nothing to lose. I'm going to never see him again if that's the case. And so when we were sitting down at this bench, I was just balls to the walls, like telling him everything that I wanted this company to be. I was like, we are going to take over all of the dating apps in the future. Like there will be no Hinge, there will be no Bumble, because Breezi will exist. Like we are going to be this super app that we're going to be the WeChat of North America. Like it was bizarre. And I was giving all these crazy analogies, and he was not making me feel dumb, and he was like raising me. He was like, oh yeah, and this and this. And that was when I felt like for the first time in a long time of building Breezi and telling people about this vision that I had, that I didn't feel crazy. Almost like every time before this, when I was telling people this vision, they made me feel like I was nuts and I was crazy. And I got to a point where I was maybe questioning, like, maybe I have it wrong. And so when I met him, that conversation went really well. It was like, wow, okay, like he sees something here that I do as well. But we went back home, and I think out of pity for me at the time, because it was just me, I was like pitching this whole thing, and at the very end of it, he's like, so what do you have? And I go, nothing. I have a slide deck, I have a Figma prototype that I put together, but like that's it, like that's as far as I've gotten. And he's like, okay, well, this doesn't look too complicated. I think it's really interesting. I can definitely help out and like build something for you, and let's just see where this goes.
Like he came to you, and said that you didn't try to pitch him on your company to join you, whatever.
I was telling him what I wanted. Like I was telling him, this is what I want to do. Like it was not, hey, this is what I want you to come help me do. It's, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. These are the things that I need help with in this specific area. And here's where I'm at right now. And I think Connor was equally as excited about what this could be. And so for him, like helping out and like building was not going to be this like crazy use of his time. And it was a great way for us to get to know each other. And so we just started building it. And it was through building it together and learning about our working styles and just getting to know like both of us better as people that over the next like 3-4 months, we came to the conclusion that we should start this company together.
Wow. Okay. Before we go into like all the details, I have a million questions. Yeah. One is like, how important it is to really have a co-founder. I feel like that's a question like a lot of people ask me, and I know there's nuance to that question, so I'd love to know your opinion on that. And the second thing is like, really like, what is the process? Like if I tomorrow want to start a company and for some reason I realize that I can't do this alone, like what's the first thing I do?
For someone who wants to start a company or wants to start a business and you're at this point where getting or not getting a co-founder is the biggest decision, I think that if you can, you should try to find a co-founder. But if you can't, that should not stop you from starting your company. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes.
It's not one or the other, in my opinion. It's not there is a better choice. I think you should try to find a co-founder because starting a company is ridiculously difficult. And not even just like the amount of things you have to do or like your skill sets, just like mentally starting a company is like very difficult. And I think having a partner throughout all of that makes it easier for you to overcome obstacles, but also like gives you more surface area for ideas. It gives you more creativity. It gives you the ability to basically do 2 times the amount of things you could do as a solo founder. But I think if you are trying to start a company, you can't find a co-founder, that shouldn't mean you don't start the company. You should still go forward in any way you can. You should try to build a product. You should try to get users. You should try to raise money and basically go as far as you can until you physically cannot anymore. But you'll find that there's no limit. So that's the way that I would think about it.
And if you really do need a co-founder, if that's, you know, like something that's pivotal for your company, like that person will find you because you're doing the work of putting yourself out there, literally exactly as it happened for you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I look back to me and Connor like becoming co-founders and being where we are today, and it is so crazy how many little things had to have happened in order for this whole experience to have manifested. Like the only reason I went to that dinner that evening was because I was invited by my friend Vincent, who is an investor at General Catalyst. The only reason Vincent invited me was because one of his colleagues found me on Twitter and sent me a DM a couple months prior inviting me to a GC event. So I met Vincent, became friends with him. He invited me to that dinner. The only reason Connor knows Vincent as well, which is why he was invited to dinner, was because his cousin, like from back home in Denver, like worked with him one summer 4 years ago. And then he came there. And then also he had to have like checked my Instagram and I had to have been writing my newsletter.
Yeah.
Like it is just crazy how many things have to happen for this particular experience to manifest. And I definitely want to dive into like tactical tips about how to find a co-founder if you want to, but a lot of it is really like not tactical, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of it just comes down to
It's about making your stars align.
Yeah.
Right. So to find a co-founder is to make your stars align. Well, guess what are the tactical steps to make your stars align so that you can find that co-founder?
That is such a good question. I think specific things you can do if you want to find a co-founder to start this company and give yourself the best chance of success. I think number one, we talked about it, is to put more information about yourself on the internet. Update your personal website, distribute your website on Twitter, distribute it on LinkedIn, distribute it on Twitter, whatever it is. Get information about yourself on the internet. The second thing I would do is get information about yourself through people's mouths. So everyone that you talk to, you should let them know you're starting a company, this is what your company wants to do, and that you're looking for a co-founder. And just even mention anywhere, hey, if you can let people know this is what I need, here's a rough, picture of what I'm looking for, that would be awesome. So word of mouth is super important. Third piece following on that is like you should have a general idea of like who you want this person to look like. Do you care what their skill sets are? Do you care what age they are, what location they're based in, what their background is? Is there a specific role that you need this co-founder to fill for you guys to be a good partnership? I knew I needed a technical co-founder who likes consumer products. That was like my only 2 requirements. And then I think the fourth and last thing is to just keep running your business while doing all of this.
Yeah.
Like don't stop. Like finding a co-founder shouldn't be the only thing you're doing in this like period. You should basically, again, be operating as a solo founder and just assume you're going to be a solo founder and do whatever you need to do on the company side. But then on the other side of these things, like tactically do that. And then I think the last piece on that too is when you do find someone, there is still a lot of vetting that needs to happen after that. Like every tactical tip I just gave was like how to find people in the funnel. But then after you get people in the funnel, there's this whole like set of questions about like how do you vet them and like who is actually going to be the best fit. Because you know this stat, but in case people don't know this statistic, 99% of startups fail because of a co-founder breakup. So this is not something you can take very lightly.
Totally. Oh my goodness. I'm feeling like the last thing you said is like really resonating with me. This idea of you can't make your entire personality finding your co-founder, and you can just like stop your business, because even if the right person were to show up, then all of a sudden you're not working on it, and it's like you're not going to be able to like jump into things with them. Or it's almost like a red flag where it's like, well, what's the progress you've done like in this past week, right? And then you're not gonna have a good answer for that person. I also want to take this like out of the concept of like a tech startup, right? Like, let's say you let's take like the example of like an artist, right? Like behind every Beyonce, there's a Jay-Z. Behind every Taylor Swift, there's a Travis Kelce, right? Like this concept of like you can't do things alone like exists beyond like building a software venture-backed tech company, right?
Totally.
It's very, very real to like find help when you need it and find people who are going to support you. And, you know, some of the most ambitious, powerful men and women in the world have some of the greatest partners behind them, like rooting for them and supporting them. So I'm sure you've thought about this topic deeply as an ambitious woman yourself, who's definitely trying to change the world with your company. So I'm curious how you think about this in your relationship and how you're able to find that person who does that for you.
How much time we should just change this.
I have endless time.
This is now the relationship advice hotline podcast. You and I could go on so long.
Secretly, I've been dreaming of wanting to have
this is like this whole like startup thing was just basically to get us to this point.
Yeah,
so we can now talk about what we want to talk about. You know me. I've always been a lover girl. I love. I hate saying that, but it's so true. But the relationship that I'm in right now and my past relationships and also the way I was approaching it and what I was thinking about is so night and day. So I met my current boyfriend, like I said, a month and a half after I went home to Toronto. Again, at this point, I was so excited about Connor. I was excited about Breezy that I was like, fuck having it. I don't want a boyfriend. I was like anti-boyfriend. I was off all the dating apps. I was not going on dates. I was living at home with my parents. Like literally you cannot find a boyfriend.
It's funny because everything you have to do to find a co-founder of putting yourself out there, like do the exact opposite when it comes to finding a boyfriend.
I was living at home. We live in the suburbs out of Toronto. It's like you're not finding a boyfriend there. And I meet my boyfriend at the gym, which is an insane experience because every time I tell people we met at the gym, all the men go, oh my God, how? Phone out, laptop, like pen out, how? What do I say? Because I feel like talking to a girl at the gym is such a
it's very intimidating.
Well, let me tell you. So he didn't hit on me. So here's how it went down. So this gym I've been going to my entire life. And when I saw him, I had a gym crush, you know? It's like, oh my God, it's my gym crush. I labeled him my gym crush. I would take sneaky Snapchats of him and send it to my girlfriends. And I was basically orchestrating ways for him to talk to me because I understand, like, guys hitting on girls at the gym is, like, really difficult. So I tried leaving my AirPods on the ground, like near the bench that I was working out at, so he would see and return them to me. He did not see it to go back and find my AirPods 10 minutes later.
That's bold. That's risky.
I've tried leaving my water bottle. I've tried leaving my sweater. I was like, let me just, he has an opportunity, pick up the sweater, come to me, give it back to me. Nothing. Did not do any of that. And then finally one day I was like, okay, he is avoiding eye contact with me. So if for him to avoid eye contact with me, he either has a girlfriend, which totally respect that, or he's into me. You know what I mean?
If he's giving you his time and energy,
right? Because you're
in the process of ignoring.
Hey, it takes active effort to ignore. Yeah. It takes active effort
100%.
to ignore. So I saw another guy at the gym who my boyfriend Nick I'd seen him talking to before. And so I thought, if I talk to this mutual friend, then I'm creating this stage or this environment where he can come up and it's not so weird because there's a third person involved in this. And so I remember standing next to a machine. I said hi to this guy. God forbid I haven't talked to this other guy in 10 years, went to my high school. He's probably like, what the heck? I'm like, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long. He looks so uncomfortable. But out of the corner of my eye, I see Nick start to walk over closer and closer to us.
Word.
And then they dabbed each other up as boys do at the gym. And that's how we started talking. And that's how we met each other. But again, if we were to tie this back together to takeaways, I think if you want something to happen, you got to make it happen yourself. Like, you got to set the stage, especially with relationships, because men, they don't know what they're doing. Okay. You need to set the dominoes up for them so they can just come in and like,
make them think it was their idea, but like
totally
still show up to the date when they ask you. Like, don't play too hard to get, but also like don't be so desperate. And it's really that middle ground. I always like preface, like, whenever I'm talking about like career and networking, someone, I'm like, it's not the boy you have a crush on. You can double text them, you can be desperate, like chase it. But then, you know, when it's very different when you're actually like looking for a romantic partner, for sure.
Well, it's funny because when I met Nick, like, I only had 3 requirements for like this other person, like my next partner. 1, I wanted them to be older than me. 2, I wanted them to have had a previous relationship in the past, so like this wasn't their first relationship. And 3, I wanted them to have their own apartment. That's it. Like, those are my only 3 requirements. And Nick is younger than me. He has never been in a relationship before, and he lives at home right now as well.
I'm so dead. I was totally expecting to be like, and he nailed all the 3.
No,
like none of them actually.
He nailed none of the 3, but I think it's really like, that's what I love about it, because to your question earlier about what I was looking for, I thought those were my requirements, like home, parents, relationship, whatever. But actually my requirements was just finding a partner who could support me and like the unique person that I am. And I know I'm not an easy person to date, and like I'm very type A in specific situations. I always need to have like what I want. I'm ADHD off the walls. I'm super dramatic. I'm trying to start a company. I'm MIA all the time. And finding someone who understands and understood that, the other things didn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, like, what it doesn't matter where you live.
Yeah, there's really no such thing as deal breakers if you actually fundamentally align on your core values. And also that kind of a partner is someone who's going to be able to support you in those really difficult times when you're trying to do very ambitious things like start a company, and they're going to like understand that very deep part of you that is like so critical to you having like basic confidence in yourself and having energy on a day-to-day basis. Like, it's so crazy to me, like, how actually beneficial and supportive, but also at the same time detrimental a partner can be, depending upon like how you view yourself and how you want like to have your life manifest. Like, you can fully create this reality for yourself depending upon like the partner you pick. And it's, I think like a lot of the times like there'll be like these memes in SF where like people who want their co-founder or investors who want founders to like try hard, they're like, we got to get them a girlfriend. Like, if they have a girlfriend, they're set. Focused. Like, they're focused. Like, they're not worrying about all these a million things. And it's like, it's that meme like comes from somewhere, right? It's this idea of like emotional support is like actually very critical to you being able to like consistently show up every day and like do the hard work.
It is really important, though, like, to really figure out what type of person you're looking for.
Yeah.
In my last relationship, like, my whole life, I believe that opposites attract. That was my big philosophy in romantic relationships, was that opposites attract, because you would balance each other out, because you have diverse opinions. And so when I was looking for partners, I gravitated towards people like really different than me. So I'm more optimistic. So I always thought I wanted a more pessimistic like partner, because we can't both be optimistic. Like, we're going to be delusional. Or like, if I am so like spontaneous and fun, then I should date someone who's more reserved and like calm. So then again, we're not like, you know, too crazy. And I think that's where I went wrong my entire life with romantic relationships, was trying to find the opposite. Because I think that maybe it works for some people, but for me, like at the end of both of my last relationships, when I look back and really tried to figure out like what the root cause was as to why it didn't work out. Yes, there were all these like surface level problems, but I think all of these surface level problems happened because we were just fundamentally such opposite people. And that was something even before I met Nick, I knew that was a requirement. Like, I wanted someone very similar to me, and not similar in terms of like job or career or like what kind of food you like or like what you're like not those superficial things, but I'm an optimist, and I wanted to date someone who is just as much of an optimist as I am. I'm extremely outgoing and extroverted. I wanted to date someone who is extremely outgoing and extroverted, and I'm someone who is spontaneous and likes to make spontaneous decisions and live life in the moment, and I wanted someone who does that. And I think because Nick and I are so aligned on those values, like, we've only been dating for like 7 months, but I think he's my person, you know?
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh my goodness. No, that's so real. Can you imagine being super excited about something and then your partner's like,
oh, I can.
It's boring. It's just so awkward. Like, and that is actually aligning on a fundamental level. Like, it's not about you guys sharing the same ice cream flavor or like both liking to watch movies. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't.
I think the optimism thing is actually so like, I think the thing that people forget is so important in relationships is if your level of risk appetite for the future of your lives are not at the same like risk appetite profile, you're fucked. I'm sorry. Like that is it. Like, because I know people say like money is like the number one reason for divorce, but like why money? It's because your guys' risk appetite is different. Like if you're really optimistic and you think you can spend all this money right now and the other person's super like realist and thinks you need to save, that's why you have money issues. It's not actually the money issues. It's that you got to be at the same, like, this is what life looks like and this is how much risk we want to take, I think is the big thing.
Oh, totally. My boyfriend and I are both like entrepreneurs. Like we don't have any money. Like we're fully putting all of it into betting in ourselves and like putting it in our companies. And I swear to God, I think I am the richest person ever. I never feel like we are not doing all these deluxe experiences. We like are, I feel really confident buying him really nice things. He buys me really nice things all the time. He's constantly taking me to nice restaurants. And it's fully about our mindset on money that it's like, it's coming back to us, like this abundance mindset of like, we don't feel like money is like we're not conservative about money. We don't feel like it's something that's like scarce in our lives that, oh, this is just setting us up for like having less money. And it's like, on the outside, you could look at us and be like, they are so financially irresponsible. Like they're so silly for like doing that. But actually the truth is, you know what really just matters here is like, we're just aligned. Like there's actually no right or wrong way to spend money, but there would be a right or wrong way if we perceived it differently. And this is not something that I went into it intentionally. Like I'm really grateful that we independently have this value that is aligned. But I swear if I had known that something like this was so fundamental to a successful relationship, maybe like earlier in my 20s, like I don't think I would have had so many failed boyfriends. You know what I mean? It's such a random thing, but it's actually so important.
That's exactly my point. There's no right or wrong answer. Like I'm not saying if you want to save or spend, like it actually matters. It's what you said, like you have to be aligned with your partner on that. And if you're not, then that is going to change your entire dynamic. And I also agree with you on the money thing. Like when I graduated in 2020 with all of this student debt, I think it was like $125K starting salary job in management consulting at a huge management consulting firm. Again, student debt during COVID, fresh out of school. But I knew this job was not for me, and I had another opportunity to join a startup, but the startup was offering me $55,000. I'm doing the math. That's a $70,000 pay cut.
That's wild.
And I remember not even like struggling with the decision. Like I just was like, nope, it's fine. I'm going to take the job that I feel like most passionate about. But that really changed. Like I think taking that $70,000 pay cut right out of undergrad completely changed my mindset towards money. Like these numbers don't mean anything anymore.
Yep. It's so funny. Like you have to have that fundamental, like I remember spending months like advocating and packaging this perfect promotion for this $40,000 payment. This $40,000 was so much money to me at the time. Now I lose and gain $40,000 within a day. I don't even flinch because like I'm running a business. Like it's a complex thing. Like I'm like shooting for this like long-term thing, right? And like that's like fundamentally what you said was like being aligned on like your risk appetite is so important. And you created this like new outlook and perspective on money like later in your 20s, and you have to like almost like sit and acknowledge that. I'm like, okay, like I need to make sure that my partner is aligned on that, because factually like really there's very few things you need to be aligned on a partner, but like that is probably the most important.
I agree. I think though, like now that I'm reflecting and like trying to be introspective as to like why I feel this way, and even to you feel like we both have no issues about money, I don't want someone to listen to this and think that this is a mindset that you can just get into. Ultimately, why I feel like this is because at this point in my career, I'm 26 years old. Mm-hmm. I know what skills I have to offer to the world, and I know I'm going to get paid for it no matter where I am, no matter how old I am, no matter who I'm talking to. That is why I always tell people in their 20s to go work at a startup or go do something where you know you have skills to offer. Because if you're in a corporate job and that is all you've known since you were 20 years old, there's so much like stress for this corporate job cutting off your money supply, and then you can't make decisions anymore. But when you have tangible skills, whether it's design, engineering, building brands, making content, it does not matter how much money you're making today, because if God forbid something happens and you need a large sum of money, you just stop spending, you go offer your skills, and within 3 weeks you're going to get there. So I think that is why, at least for myself, I feel so comfortable with money not being the focus, is because I also have the confidence that when it does need to be the focus, I can switch in like 30 seconds and be on that path.
Wait, that's so real that you said that. The only reason the only reason I'm sitting here and like acting this way about money is because I proved to myself I can make a lot of money.
Like if tomorrow someone, like you needed $100,000 at the end of the month, you're just going to stop spending. You're going to go and double your skill offerings in all these areas, and you're going to get there. Yeah. And then you can go back to spending. Like that is where the freedom comes in. It is also a mindset thing for sure, but knowing in your back pocket you can switch immediately and have cash flow is not something you get when you're working at Deloitte.
100%. And and you're right. Like if you don't have that financial confidence, you don't have that confidence in your skills and what value you can offer to the world, go find that before you take risks with money, before you quit your job and start the company. Because if you don't have that confidence, like you said, it's going to be very difficult to tap into this delusional mindset about money to actually then shoot for that bigger bet, like return on money in the future, right? But we have to acknowledge the work that we did, the hustle that we did to create enough skills to actually be valuable in the workforce, right? Like that's so important that you said that, because you're right. I don't want young people thinking that, oh, like I don't actually have to have skills. I don't need to get a job. I can just like have this delulu mindset on money and like build a company. It was like the only reason we're prepared in this moment to build a company is because we had all these jobs and all these experiences that have created this set of skills that make us prepared for this moment. So like I'm so glad you called that out, because I like forget that, because we're like you're 27 too, right?
26.
Oh, you're 26. Oh yeah. Well, I'm 27, and like I mean,
I have to really emphasize 26. You know, like, I'm still young.
Yeah, you're still in your mid-20s. I've now proceeded to my later 20s.
No, I'm still early
I
20s.
will say though, being 27 is the worst. Like I'm so much rather be 26, because I could like get away with things being like I'm in my mid-20s. Yeah. Like we're not in my second era of my defining decade.
That's insane.
And now I am, and I'm like, wow, this is really, really depressing. I'm 3 years to my 30, and then I'm gonna be 30, and like remember, like obviously the world has taught me that everything stops at 30. Like you don't matter at 30 as a woman,
that
and I'm like, oh my god, gotta untrain myself, right? Like I shouldn't feel so depressed about being 27 and like depressed by the fact that I'm getting closer to 30. That's just literally society training us women that like, oh, like we literally lose our value at 30. Like it's so weird that I feel this way. Like there's nothing different about this year versus last year. And when I'm 30, I'm going to be that much smarter and more energetic with that much more money and leverage with so much of my like life ahead of me. It's just it's crazy because I'm like self-aware of this, but I still get affected by it all the time.
Age is a weird thing.
It's so weird.
I get nostalgic every year on my birthday too.
Speaking of money, you've also raised some money for your company, which is like just a ridiculously hard thing to do. So I want to see if you have any tips for people who are trying to fundraise, and also that you were part of the Neo Accelerator. So I want to hear about that, because that's like the newest YC on the block is what I hear.
So we haven't raised any money yet outside of Neo. So I can speak on like accelerators in general, because I think there's a lot of like opinion on that. So Neo is
but for context, like you get money from an accelerator, so it is like huge accomplishment, huge achievement, like very, very like proud of you.
It was awesome. Like so Connor and I, we started working together in October. It was a side project, and then I think January was when we had the first like maybe like we should co-found this conversation, and then the rest of January, February, and then half of March was us figuring out our co-founder like relationship, our values, our dynamics. And so we spent 2 months like coming to terms of us being co-founders. And then in the middle of March, we applied to Neo. And for people who don't know, it is both, they're a venture capital fund. They invest in early stage startups, but they also have the accelerator program where they take 20 companies every summer. That's the batch. It's very small. And we applied. It was a written application, but we both individually knew 2 companies in previous batches. So we got them to obviously vouch for us. And that is another thing that's super important in tech, is to have back channels and networks. We filled the application out, got in. And so, yeah, we spent 4 weeks in Colorado working with 20 other companies, which is such a once in a lifetime experience. We were staying in this place called Copper Mountain, which is a ski resort 2 hours outside of Colorado. And it was only 20 companies, 50 people total. We all lived in the same like cabins in the ski village. There was one workroom. Everybody was working there 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. Like, it was such a grind, but I loved all of it.
Wow, that sounds... I hate that the grind sounded really fun.
Well,
like,
it's fun
like I don't want to romanticize it, but
it was fun because like the people were great.
Yeah.
There was snacks everywhere, like blankets at night, like whiteboards. It was very typical like tech accelerator vibes, but it was really fun.
No, that sounds
also
awesome.
there was nothing else to do. So like you can only work.
You're literally in a cabin.
Yeah, you're literally there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so now that you're like full force building out this consumer app, where you are on your roadmap, when is it coming out? Like, I'm so excited to use it.
Yeah.
I think you just shipped like an early version of it. So tell us about that. And also like, how are people responding to this, right? Like there's 1,000,001 consumer apps that are started every single day and people are like very jaded and bitter of like, oh, you're building another social app like Otto, like you and like 50 other people. It's like, how do you really like stand out and even have that conversation?
The biggest thing I learned in starting a consumer company is that you need to be obsessed with the problem and not obsessed with your product, which I have heard this feedback time and time again. It's not new, novel information, but it did take me a while to really internalize it. And when we did really internalize, like figuring out, understanding the problem more, that is when growth unlocked for us. And so in the early days, I had this product idea to like turn the Notes app into a social like place where you could see your list that your friends made and other people made. And that was such a great idea on its own, but it lacked a lot of substance. You know, like people would ask why. And like beyond it being fun, I was like, oh, I just know this would work. But like that's not a valid answer. And it took a lot of like, this is why I think it's so good to really be specific in building this beta and understanding. But when we were building Breezi for our early users, we had about 1,000 users, and we would consistently do user interviews with them while also just understanding the market. And what we figured out is the problem with social media today is that most people are consumers and not creators. Most platforms have less than 1% of everyone on these platforms who actually create content. 99% of other people are only just consuming it, scrolling it. That's problem number one. Problem number two is that for the people who do create content, it's usually very like superficial. It is highlight reels. You live your life and then you pluck out specific moments to share on the internet. And for the people who consume, that's not an enjoyable process because it's only 1% of your life. And for Gen Z, it's really different for them because they spent their entire lives on the internet. So more of them want to contribute and share, and they don't just want to share the 1%, they want to share all of their lives. They mostly live online and then just choose specific things not to share. And that was the problem space that we became obsessed with. And the product is our unique insight and solution to it. You know what I mean? So like Breezi is not just like a place to make and share lists with your friends. It's solving the problem of how do we get more people to share their lives online instead of watching other people? And how do we make it easier to share multiple dimensions of your life? Good, bad, boring, big, small, and lists is this really unique atomic unit to do that. And so we've completely like changed everything. We're rebranding the company. We want to come up with a new name. We want to reskin the product. We're rechanging all of our marketing. We're no longer, being this like for fun, like Pinterest list place. Breezi is the destination for oversharing. And like that is the domain that we want to own. And so that's been a really big unlock for us in the last couple of months.
That's a huge update, and that also makes so much sense. There's also this stigma around like if you're not an AI company, like you're not being, you're not worth being invested in. And my kind of logic is like, well, I mean, AI should be in all technology. Like it's not like you should be an AI company. It's more about like, how are you using AI, to solve this problem? So I'm curious about that.
Yes, I fully agree with that. The best analogy I heard for this like trend is imagine a decade ago when mobile phones came out. Like you would not build a website or product and be like, this is a mobile website. You know what I mean? Like, of course it's a mobile website, but it's also a desktop. Like, this is simply another unlock in terms of like how technology is influencing your company. And so I think it's the same with AI. Like, Breezy's being built right now in like the native AI shift. And so of course it's in everything we do. We don't have an AI strategy because our entire company is an AI strategy. Like, I think that is like the unique point of it. I also think it's important, though, for people who want to start companies in this day and age to have like hot takes or like strong opinions about AI too. Like, it's obviously in every company, but people don't agree on like how it's being used. And I actually think it's really important to form your own conclusions about this is how we're going to use it, but also like this is how we're not going to use it, and be really like strong on that stance. And so for Breezy, like every time we pitch investors or we talk to product people, they will say, oh my gosh, and you can make all of these AI generated lists that you can show people in the feed. And we are adamant that's not happening. Like, Breezy will not have AI generated content. It goes back to the problem space. The problem space is not that there's no content. It's that people are not sharing their lives with other people. And so AI generated content is not the solution to this problem space. It's actually just the antithesis of what we're doing. And so there will never be AI generated content on Breezy, but we will use AI in other product features, right? Like content delivery, synthesis, in search, like in connecting people together. But I think it's important to have like hot takes and like be like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not doing that.
Oh my God, you have to have an opinion when you're building something that's like net new for the world. That's so factual. I know you have this really incredible personal brand. Like, you've really done a fabulous job of like curating who you are and what your company stands for on the internet, and also having an audience who's like reads it and like pays attention and wants to know about you. I guess, do you think it's important for all founders to have a personal brand? And like, how do they go about and do that?
I'm curious to hear yours. I feel like you're going to say yes.
I mean, yeah, obviously I think yes, but I'm curious, like, the thing is, like, I have really spent my time building a personal brand as my number 100% thing. Like, I don't know truly what it's like to build a product and then also have the burden of like, you know, making content and curating that. Like, that is so much work. I feel exhausted by it every day. I can't imagine also running a company, but it feels hypocritical of me to be like, oh, it's really important, all founders need to do this. But they're like, with what time and like how? Like, that's not my number one skill. That's not my number one focus.
If I were to give advice on people who have the question about if you need a personal brand or not, I think my answer would be only if that actually speaks to you. Like, of course, it's a lot of work to make content, but I was I was yapping before like any of this was happening. Like, I just have a desire to be seen in the world, and I want people to know my name, and I want people to know what I'm up to. And it's obviously an added benefit that it helps my company and it helps me as a founder build my network. But I think if that is not you, and you're having people ghostwrite all of your LinkedIns and you're being on all these podcasts and you don't like it and it's taking up your time, don't do it. You know, like, people can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. And when you build a personal brand on the internet, people will automatically assume you want to talk and you want to meet. And so if you have a personal brand and tons of people reach out to you and you don't respond to any of them, that is a terrible experience. Like,
totally.
I respond to almost everyone who DMs me, who talks to me, because that is just my personality. And that is the ultimate like success. Like,
it's like, why are you curating this person on the internet if you're not actually going to be responsive to people who care? That's so true. I mean, I do the exact same thing. Like, I respond to every DM. I think it's so important.
But see, I give that advice, and I also just think like, oh, there's so many benefits to having a personal brand. I know,
that's the thing.
I think maybe there's
like you are tapping into asymmetrical upside and so many opportunities because of the fact that the truth is, people are not thinking about you, but you consistently showing up on the internet and posting about yourself is giving that little poke. Hey, I exist. Hey, I exist. And then when that opportunity comes on their table and you poke them, hey, I exist, like, oh, Lillie would be great for this. And all of a sudden, you're getting all the opportunities that other people who are silent on the internet are not getting. And then when you're trying to build a business, which is so incredibly hard to do, that little assist on that opportunity could be like really helpful and could actually be life-changing for your company. So then, especially when you're building a consumer company where marketing is so important, getting like it into the hands of more users and getting awareness, right? And I don't know. It's honestly like a very tricky subject, and I have all my thoughts, but as someone who's not practicing every day, like I'm not building that product, I don't really know what the right way to advise someone who is managing that to now also find the time to build that personal brand, to tap into that opportunity.
I think a way to solve this problem of not wanting to build a full personal brand, but also wanting to reap the benefits of having a personal brand and that distribution is, I think there's a happy medium if you can find a way to let people just follow you along as you build your company. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think to think about it as two separate things, like, okay, I have to build my company and then I got to go write newsletters and make TikToks. Of course, that sounds like so much work. But if you can think about a way where you can build your company and simply like create a window where someone can watch and observe and follow, where it's obviously like there's still work because you have to make the window, but it's not two separate things. And I think that's the analogy that I'm giving. But if you think about ways that could happen, I'm just brainstorming here. But like, what if every Friday you like just live stream you working on Figma on Twitch? I don't know. Like, I'm not saying you have to do that, but
Totally.
that is like it's going to be 1 hour on Fridays. You're just working on Twitch and someone can watch you work. Like that.
Wait, now I feel like you need to do that's such a good idea. Like no one's doing that.
Oh, that could be interesting.
Yeah.
Or it's just like, what if you just like record your like stand up one day and just like do your normal stand up and just record it and post the clip on LinkedIn and be like, here's a sneak peek of our daily stand up. You know, like,
wow, yeah.
Are there different ways that you can simply run your business and just allow for other people to like participate in watching? That might be a newsletter that you write. Maybe you just like journal and what you just decide to like publish the journal, you know, like, so yeah, I would maybe think about a way to like let people follow you along your journey without you having to become this like content creator.
Yeah. Wait, I'm obsessed. People always say build in public, but then it just sounds so intimidating. But it's less about, you know, creating content as a separate stream. It's like, how do you actually embed that into the work you're already doing so you're not context switching? And it's like what you said, it's like, don't do it if you don't like it. There's probably some medium you do like, whether it's Twitch, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's TikTok, whatever that medium is that's like natural and authentic to you, like double tap into that as a way to like show that window, because it'll be that much easier to do it. And I know a lot of people will say like, oh, like my customers are not on TikTok or my customers are not on Twitter, whatever they say. It's like, everyone's everywhere. Like, we live in the digital age of social media. We're all obsessed with our phone and we all have an account everywhere. Like, focus on what is like good for you, which is authentic for you. Like, your people will find you. Your ideal users will find you. Your best investors will find you. And it'll just be that much easier to wake up and like add this additional stream of work into your life, I guess. Maybe that's the answer. I don't know. I know you're actively doing it like every single day. And to correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't feel like it's this big burden on your like entrepreneurial journey. So it must be because you like it, and maybe that's what it is.
It's definitely because I like it, but it is still hard. Like, it definitely between like
so true,
trying to run a company, trying to like be the CEO of this company, but also be the like head of growth at this company, and also like the head of marketing at this company, which is like 3 completely different things. And also trying to be a manager for my team, and also trying to talk to investors and other stakeholders, and then also be like a content creator and like tell the people about myself. Like, it is definitely a lot of work. And now that I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, I just don't know how I'm getting that done. I guess it's just like happening. But
yeah, that's very impressive, girl. That was a lot. I was like, whoa.
I was like, wait, actually, how am I doing all of that? But I think that's why I'm building a social company. Like, ever since I was small, ever since I could remember, I just like have this obsession with the world, like seeing who I was. And I think partially it's because I'm an only child. Like, I grew up very much by myself, and there was no safety net of people in my life. So I had to make sure that like other people knew who I was, just for like a safety perspective. And then it became this thing where I saw like, oh, it's actually really great to tell people who you are and to have them know you and have them understand you. Like, having someone understand you is like one of the greatest experiences ever.
Yeah.
And so I think that fundamental belief of, I think everybody in the world wants to be seen and understood is like why I'm building this company right now. But also like in the world of like content creation, like I think if you really do want the world to like see and understand you, and you can see how content creation is like such a great tool of getting to that point. It feels like less work maybe. Like, yeah, of course it's a lot of work for me to make these TikToks and to write my newsletter and all these things, but I'm like, by doing so, more people know about me. They know about what I'm doing. And so I think it's just all this, like, it's a whole virtuous cycle, you know? Yeah. But I think there are also people in the world who just like don't care about being seen. They don't care if like one day they're gone and no one knows they're gone and no one reports them.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but
be self-aware.
Be self-aware, like understand what you really want and align yourself to the right values, I think is really important.
Yeah. No, that's so real. It's also so real that like content is hard. I literally run a media company and I do like, maybe I push out 10 to 15 pieces of content a day. Like I'm telling you, every day it gets harder. The world is constantly changing. Like social media is changing so fast every day. Algorithms are changing. One thing that worked yesterday is not going to work tomorrow because people are bored by it. It's like just accepting that it's a hard thing makes it almost easier. You're like, hey, it's supposed to be hard. I'm struggling right now because it's hard, and that's also just epic. Like I'm pushing my brain. I'm pushing myself. I'm challenging myself because at the end of it, when you actually do it, when you get that viral video, you build that company that has millions of users, you sell it one day, whatever, like that feeling is only going to feel good if it was hard at one point. And it's so important that you choose the hard things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what your 20s are about.
Yeah, exactly. It's really about choosing the hard things. You're so right.
But also I want to caveat that by saying it's also okay if you don't choose the hard things. Yeah. You know, like I think the advice for like people who are in their 20s right now who feel like they are getting all sorts of different opinions and everyone has a different idea or a piece of advice for them, I would just say your job is to collect all the feedback and like listen to everyone, but you don't have to take everyone's advice, and you just need to sit back at the end of the day and assess your options and decide what path you want to take. And no matter what you decide, it will be fine. But I think no one is going to know your life better than you and what you want. And as long as you make a decision for yourself, you're not going to feel so bad about it because it's a decision you made for yourself. And even if it's hard or even if it doesn't work out, that's okay. You can change your mind. But even for you, I'm sure like you're making the hard decision right now to make and share content. If one day you decide not to do it anymore, you're not going to regret the last like couple of years you spent doing this. But if you were building Gen She right now because someone told you to and like someone convinced you it was a good opportunity.
Oh, it'd fail.
And then in a couple of years you look back, you're going to be like, why did I do that?
Yeah, totally. And all that regret. No, it's so true. I mean, the number one way to like outcompete your competition is literally to be the last one standing. And what is the most effortless, easiest way to be the last one standing? Be yourself.
Be yourself.
Do things that you're passionate about. Do things that's authentic to you. It's so easy to be yourself. And that's like why what your advice you just gave is actually so perfect for 20-somethings to hear. I mean, like we're literally 20-somethings, but like I guess I wish someone had told me this when I was, earlier in my 20s, because like so much of that time was like seeking alternate validation from other systems or like whatever, whether it was like other people in my community or like other peers or coworkers, whatever it was. I was like constantly seeking validation. And guess what? All the things that I did before, I was never exceptional at any of it. Like no one remembers any of it. It wasn't that great because it was really difficult to show up every day as someone who wasn't me. And I can tell you this is probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life is like build a media company from nothing. But I can tell you it's also been the most effortless year of my life because it's so easy to just like be yourself. And I genuinely feel like this is probably the last thing that anyone expected from me. Like, I mean, I grew up in the Bay Area, like I grew up around tech, but it was just me basically waking up one day and deciding I'm just going to be like very open-minded and authentic about like who am I actually, and be okay if that answer is not something everyone else thought I would be or even what I thought of myself. And it's exactly like what you said. It's just like truly listen to yourself. Like what is it? And like whatever that is, it's not the wrong answer. It'll never be the wrong answer. I asked you this on our last episode and I want to ask you this again because I'm just curious if you'll have a different answer. It's been almost a year. So we filmed that. And it's kind of on the topic of what you've already been talking about. But if you go back in time and tell your younger self some advice. So imagine Lillie, she just turned 20. What would you tell her?
Take me back, please.
Honestly.
God, I want to be there.
Yeah. So what would you tell her?
Oh, that's such a good question. It gets so nostalgic, you know? You reminisce about the past. I think if I were to give advice to my younger self, I would tell her that all experiences are good experiences, and bad experiences just lead to greater outcomes, and good experiences are things that you enjoy in the moment. And life is just this giant mix of like up and down and up and down and the waves, and like you get in your down bad era and you're like, holy fuck, how am I here again? Like, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have a co-founder, I don't have a company, I don't have a visa, I don't have an apartment. Like, you know what I mean? Like in those like despair moments, to actually like enjoy it a little bit, honestly. Like, because now where like I wouldn't be able to enjoy where I am today, like being an SF, like with my co-founder, building this company, talking to you, if I wasn't in that like pit of despair. You know what I mean? Like if you just like take a step back, if your life was just like good all the time, that's not very good, you know? So I think I would just tell my younger self that life is just a series of ups and downs, and that is what makes your life so colorful and multidimensional and intense and enjoyable. And you should remember all those moments. You should document all those moments. You should share all those moments, and you should just be grateful for all of those experiences together, because all of it together is like what matters, you know? And like, I know that, you know, right now I'm like up, but I'm going to come down. Like I'm going to come so down, and then I'm going to come back up. And I think knowing that makes you less scared. It makes you less worried, and it's okay to be worry, but it makes you less worried because it's inevitable. You're like, it is inevitable. Bad things will happen, failures will happen, fear will happen, rejection will happen, but it is all part of it. Yeah. You know, like I think, a lot of people's anxieties are just around bad things happening, but when you accept that life is full of that, but it also comes with like all the positives and the serendipity and like the crazy things in the universe that you're like, how the fuck did it happen? Like, how did I meet my co-founder like tonight at this event? Like that, and then the pit of despair is what evens out to like this beautiful, perfect life. And so I would just tell my younger self to like be ready for that, because it's happening.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love that we do our catch-ups over the podcast.
Yeah,
we're like,
seriously.
Oh, we're not even going to go in the conversation. Let's just record it for everyone else to see our completely delusional brains. But I'm literally like so energized by you. I feel like you're very optimistic, and I need to be around like more optimistic people, honestly, because it makes me feel like less crazy for like wanting big things for myself. And I just want more people, especially more young women, to like be okay with wanting really crazy things for yourself, because you're very capable and you totally deserve it. And you are literally the epitome of that. So I'm just so excited for people to watch this episode.
I can't wait to see what happens in a year from now when we record again.
Oh, we're doing part 3. Yeah. Come back 1 year later, part 3. We'll have all the tea, all the updates.
I'm like, I'm engaged. I'm just kidding.
That would be like the thumbnail. Lillie's engaged, part 3. But thank you for coming. Oh my God, we always have the best episodes.
Okay, we'll do it again in 1 year.
Yes, see you then.